Welcome to the second to last night of reading this book, Quentin Tarantino's Cinema Speculation. We are on section 17 called The Funhouse. It's a pretty beefy chapter section. And then tomorrow will be the last section of the book, and it'll be the last live night read that I do for this book and for a minute. Uh, I'm excited to finish it, and just I do like it, but it's also been pretty exhausting to read these just about every night. Um, but I gotta finish it. Only tonight and tomorrow left, so I'm just gonna wait around for a minute. Yo, what's up, Rodolfo? Just gonna wait for a minute, see who else pops up before I get started. Smoke my little vape. But yeah, only two sections left. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. But yeah, I gotta say I'm tired of reading. It can be exhausting. They wish. They wish. They wish they could be you. All right, I'm just gonna wait a few more seconds. All right. Let's get into it, shall we? It's getting harder to hold with one hand. All right. The Funhouse, 1981. Hey, we made it to the 80s. 1981. In the sweltering hot Texas summer of 73, on a threadbare budget, in 4 weeks, with a crew of Texas locals, filmmaker Toby Hooper fucked around and made one of the greatest movies of all time, The Texas Chain Massacre. To me, The Texas Chain Massacre is one of the few perfect movies ever made. There are very few perfect movies. This is okay, since in the pursuit of cinematic art, perfection shouldn't be the goal. Nevertheless, when it's accomplished, even by accident, it's an achievement. I didn't see TCM when Texas Chain Saw Massacre when it was first released in 1974. Then I was still dependent on an adult to take me to see something like that. It wasn't like my mother forbade me to see it. It's just she wasn't interested in going out and seeing something called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She wouldn't take me to auditoriums where they held wrestling matches either. So no, Jimmy Superfly Snuka and Pork Chop for me. I did see it about 2 years later, once New Line Cinema acquired the rights and re-released it on a double feature with Sergio Martino's terrific Italian Galileo Torso. Rather than a tumble down the rabbit hole of TCM's perfection, I want to discuss some of Mr. Hooper's subsequent work. TCM was such a one of a kind beast. There really wouldn't be any way for him to satisfyingly follow it up. So it isn't surprising that Hooper's next film, Eaten Alive, starring Neville Brand and a hungry crocodile, was initially considered a disappointment. But as more people started seeing it on a home video in the 80s, its reputation among genre aficionados started improving. It's no Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's effectively sleazy and spooky. Most of the film takes place in one location, a shanty hotel located at the lip of a swamp, and Hooper does a tremendous job with the cheap but effective set. Neville Brand is a hoot at the batshit maniac Judd, who runs the Starlight Hotel. The establishment's main attraction is a huge crocodile that Judd's got penned up for the tourists. But it would appear the hotel owner's main forte is murdering his guests, especially sexy young females, though why any female would choose to stay at this dump is the picture's biggest leap of faith. Then, disposing of the bodies by feeding them to his croc. The plot thickens when a weird married couple and their 7-year-old daughter check into the Starlight and, as guests, Chainsaws Marilyn Burns and Phantom of the Paradise's William Finley giving unglued performances that wouldn't be out of place in a John Waters feature. The croc ends up eating both the little girl's dog and her daddy. Judd ends up capturing and terrorizing the mother. The little girl gets away, and the raving lunatic's efforts to catch her lead to Judd's inevitable final resting place inside the crocodile's belly. The film has an entertaining combination of genuinely spooky and eerie ambiance, a sexual sleaze factor that makes it resemble an early 70s roughie, and high-pitched camp performances played by a tired-out cast of familiar puffy faces. Any fans of actress Carolyn Jones, who was one of the coolest females in 50s film, will be shocked to see how terrible she looks in this. Yet her characterization of a Bayou whorehouse madam is surprisingly specific and convincingly authentic. Roberta Collins, one of my favorite New World Picture starlets, The Big Dollhouse, Cage Heat, and Matilda the Hun in Death Race 2000. That's a Yeah, I remember that one. Plays her opening reel role as one of Jones's prostitutes and Judd's first victim. Surprisingly serious, it's the film's most effective reel. And a young, full of Gage Robert England is just flat out sensational, as opposed to George Romero's Creep Show and the Tales from the Crypt TV series, which killed themselves trying to capture the look and the aesthetic of the E.G. horror comics. Hooper's flick captures the humorously mean spirited repulsion of the lurid magazine without seemingly trying. I saw Eaten Alive before I saw Texas Chain Massacre. During the week it played in Los Angeles, naturally at the Carson Twin Cinema, on a double feature with a Mondo documentary about the occult called Journey into the Beyond, narrated by John Carradine. It supposedly contained footage of a real exorcism. I didn't buy that, but it looked pretty good. Because of the newspaper movie ad, I was aware this crocodile movie was directed by the same guy who did the Texas Chain Massacre. I went to the film that night with the 37-year-old fellow that rented an empty room in my mom's house named Floyd. Floyd and I loved Eaten Alive. Not because either of us thought it was a great movie, we both felt for a cheap horror flick it wasn't bad. And a few moments were better than that. We liked the actors, we liked the sleaziness, we especially appreciated the effective Jaws-like jump scare when the crocodile suddenly busts through the railing and snatches William Finley from behind. But most of all, we love Robert England as the butt-fucking, shit-talking white trash buck. As soon as the movie begins, right off the bat, it starts with a shot of a tentative Roberta Collins shot through the V frame of Buck's Levi clad pant legs as he says off screen, "What's up, Beverly? My name's Buck and I'm here to fuck." Floyd turned to me and asked incredulously, "What did he say?" I repeated, "My name's Buck and I'm here to fuck." At the repeating of that line, Floyd burst out laughing, and when Floyd got the giggles, it was impossible not to laugh with him. So the two of us started laughing, and then, right at the beginning of the movie, we got into the single biggest case of the giggles I ever fell into during a movie. And then when Buck tried to fuck Roberta Collins in the ass, we fell out again. We laughed about that Buck fuck line for the first whole 20 minutes of the movie, the most serious part of the film. Just as soon as one of us would calm down and start trying to reclaim their shit, the other one would laugh again, and that would set both of us off for another 4 minutes. At the world premiere of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at Cannes Film Festival, Gael Garcia Bernal told me the same thing happened to him and Diego Luna when Brad Pitt said the line in the Musso and Frank parking lot, "Don't cry in front of the Mexicans." He said they laughed so hard and so long, Gail's girlfriend started getting mad at them. In a normal theater, i.e., not a grindhouse, other patrons might have been annoyed by Floyd and me, but there was always a general malaise and apathy to sparsely populated grindhouse audiences. Packed, grind, packed grindhouse audiences with good action movies were the exact opposite. Eventually, we got our shit back together and settled down and watched the movie, but we waited patiently for Buck's return. And about 40 minutes later, he did. The minute we saw Robert England's face, we burst out laughing again. We weren't trying to be silly, we just couldn't help it. Consequently, we didn't love the movie, but we loved watching the movie. And on the drive home, we laughed ourselves silly about the buck fuck line all over again. Soon after, I started noticing Robert England showing up in other movies. This was years before Nightmare on Elm Street, A Star is Born, Big Wednesday, and my favorite post Eaten Alive appearance, Robert Milligan's Blood Brothers. I tell Floyd, hey man, I just saw Buck in another movie. Floyd never knew his real name, he was just always Buck. Needless to say, I have very fond memories of watching Eaten Alive during its 1 week Los Angeles engagement in 1976. Then Toby Hooper did the two-part, two-night TV movie adaptation of Stephen King's Salem's Lot, which received some of the best reviews of any TV movie made up to that time. Judas Christ and TV Guide gave it a rave, as well as the TV critic for the Los Angeles Times, who said it was one of the best film vampire tales of all time. I missed the movie when it first aired because I was performing in a play at the time. Oh, that's pretty cool. This was a good 5 years before I had a VHS recorder. I not only read those good reviews, but I read the extensive coverage of the film in the reigning horror magazine of its day, Fangoria. George Romero said in the pages of that magazine that Salem's Lot was his favorite King adaptation. He added, yeah, Carrie was good, but not as good as the book. I don't agree, and neither does King. Actress Marie Windsor, who was in both Hooper's Salem's Lot and Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, said Hooper was the best young director she'd worked with since Kubrick. She called him another Stanley. Bob Martin, the editor of Fangoria, wrote, Hooper's adaptation showed much more understanding of King's work and the horror genre that was displayed in Kubrick's The Shining. This was back when the horror press completely took King's side in his beef with Kubrick. So when I finally saw it, I was prepared for something great. And man, was I disappointed. To me, it just seemed like a stretched out TV movie done very TV style. And I like TV movies. Even in terms of two-night TV movie events based on classic horror novels featuring James Mason, Jack Smite's Frankenstein, The True Story, was way better. I tried to watch it again a couple of years ago and it was just too dull. I turned it off after about 25 minutes. The only thing that held up for me was David Soul's performance. It reminded me of what an intense actor he was back in those days. The pilot TV movie for Starsky and Hutch is another good reminder. To put that in perspective, David Soul's performance was the one negative Fangoria had about Hooper's adaptation. So after the success of Salem's Lot, Toby Hooper landed his first studio feature film deal with Universal Pictures, hired him to helm their horror quickie, The Funhouse. For the readers of Fangoria, along with John Carpenter, George Romero, David Cronenberg, and later Joe Dante, he gave the best interviews. Toby Hooper was a superstar. The main readership of the magazine were boys 13 and 23, of which I was one. It's kind of cool to think back on a magazine that encouraged its adolescent readership to subscribe so fully to Andrew Sarris's auteur theory. In the 80s, inside the pages of Fangoria magazine, it was horror film movie directors that were its readers' heroes, along with special effect makeup artists Tom Savini, Rick Baker, and Rob Bottin. This was a drastic difference when compared to Forrest Ackerman's famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, the leading horror movie mag of adolescence 10 years before. They may have from time to time featured an interview with the director of a current horror flick, but they weren't the mag's name attractions. The spot was reserved for the Universal monsters, the Frankenstein monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the creature from The Black Lagoon, as well as reigning horror movie stars, but both old Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney Jr., and current Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. So naturally, Toby Hooper's first studio feature received big coverage in Fangoria, including in the February 1981 issue number 11, the cover featuring makeup artist Rick Baker's creature design for the film's deformed, pathetic antagonist. Even Sister Mag Cine Fantastique, which dealt in horror but leaned more toward science fiction, featured a nice piece on the making of the Funhouse, including a cool photograph of the director. So, for readers of the magazine, the Funhouse wasn't just another new horror film ad in the movie section of your local newspaper appearing suddenly out of nowhere. We were all well aware of it, had been following reports of its production, and were awaiting its release. The biggest horror movie boom in cinema history occurred from 1979 through 1982. The slasher film cycle was in full swing with a seemingly endless string of titles, but also monster movies, animal attack movies, Jaws ripoffs, Alien ripoffs, Omen ripoffs, Carrie ripoffs, haunted house movies, ghost stories, vampire films, science fiction, terror, as well as the last gasp of theatrically released Italian horror and New World Pictures fright fest like Humanoids from the Deep. In 1981, it seemed every 2 weeks another horror title was playing at a theater or drive-in near you, and it was amid this horror movie glut when, in its opening week, I went to see The Funhouse at the UA Del Amo Mall Cinemas. My verdict? I enjoyed it well enough, but considered it a touch on the mediocre side. Then, sometime in 2011, I went on a slasher film kick. I rewatched all the slasher films I had seen before and cut all the ones I had missed or ignored. And after my rewatch of The Funhouse, I was a little surprised. I found myself much more impressed with Hooper's direction, the staging of scenes, his dynamic coverage, and the cynical, tawdry, and downright nasty tone he carries throughout the picture. Cinematographer Andrew Laszlo's photography, his towering crane shots, and his imaginative focus pulls, but especially production designer Mort Rabinowitz's creepy carnival and his immensely effective funhouse set. But the big surprise was Larry Block's screenplay. At first view, it may appear simple and obvious, but on the second go around, it revealed both a level of depth and even sophistication that forced me to reconsider the whole film. While movies have had no problem depicting life with a traveling circus, Chaplin's The Circus, The Greatest Show on Earth, Circus World, Toby Tyler, Big Top, Pee Wee, carnival stories have been further and further between. Of course, the two indisputable classics in the genre are Todd Browning's Freaks and Edmund Golding's Nightmare Alley. Freaks is rightly recognized as a towering classic of cinema's golden age, which once seen is never forgotten. What the fuck is that pinhead girl? And while Nightmare Alley is also rightly considered a classic, I still think it's underrated. To me, Nightmare Alley is as good as studio filmmaking ever gets. Tyrone Power, who I've never been fond of, is fucking sensational in the movie. And the script adaptation by Jules Furthman, one of my handful of nominees for greatest Hollywood screenwriter of all time, is excellent. It could have never been made in the 50s. Power doesn't say Ferdman's dialogue, he sings it. Nightmare Alley feels every inch like an Italian neorealism movie from the same era. The film could swap casts with Bitter Rice, Tyrone Power, Vittorio Gassman, Doris Dowling, Joan Blondell, Sylvana Mangan- Mangano, Colleen Gray, and both films would still hold their same place of pride in film history. I'm also fond of Roger Corman's Carnival Rock, which plays like a Roger Corman directed Joseph von Sternberg film. It hits its Pagliacci imagery a little too on the nose, but the card game showdown between David J. Stewart and future director Brian Hutton is one of my favorite Corman directed scenes. Growing up, my favorite carnival film was Elvis's superior vehicle Rustabout. In that era of Elvis Presley movies. Elvis movies weren't real movies, they were Elvis Presley movies. It was a pretty entertaining little picture, chock full of cool elements. Elvis entering the movie on a motorcycle, dressed head to toe in black leather, in what looks like the same outfit he'll later make iconic in the '69 comeback special. The strong Big Valley era Barbara Stanwyck as he co-lead a one-line bit at the beginning by Raquel Welch, the best soundtrack of any of Elvis's color films, including a rarity for the King on film. Elvis singing a cover of somebody else's hit, The Coasters' Little Egypt, and the only film where Elvis gets to demonstrate his Ed Parker taught karate moves. Only a year before, the Funhouse, Lurimar released Robert Kaler's Corny, starring Gary Busey, Jodie Foster, and Robbie Robertson. Carney was written by Thomas Bum, a very talented screenwriter who also wrote the compelling horror film The Sender. But it's directed by a very untalented director, Robert Kaler, if you can even call what he does in the film directing. Baum's script and his self-penned superior novelization shows the seedy, realistic side of Carney life, concentrating more on the grifting carny games which lure marks to the midway and fleece them of their hard-earned cash. The film wants to do for life on the midway what Ron Shelton's Bull Durham later did for minor league baseball. Take you on a tour of a world you never really knew anything about, and by the time the picture's over, you leave an expert, even speaking the lingo with confidence. And to a certain degree, Carney is successful in that endeavor. Nevertheless, the missed and fumbled opportunities add up to ultimately an unsatisfying experience. If Carney has an authorial voice, it isn't due to anyone behind the camera. It's due to the unique combination of manic energy and beyond the beyond naturalism that Gary Busey displays in front of the camera. Carney was the actor's follow-up to his breakout Oscar-nominated turn as Buddy Holly in the Buddy Holly story. The film positioned Busey after a decade of character actor work as an exciting leading man. At one time, he was attached to Jim McBride's superlative remake of Breathless as Jesse LeJack, aka Jesse Burns, aka Jesse Lee Burns, the character that Richard Gere ultimately essayed. Believe it or not, the manic hee-hawing buffoon of reality television was, pre-motorcycle accident, one of the '70s greatest actors, not just a talented journeyman character actor, but an acting giant. Just ask another acting giants that performed with him, like Dustin Hoffman, Straight Time, Martin Sheen, The Execution of Private Slavic, and Jeff Bridges, The Last American Hero. Busey had a gift for a highly theatrical version of naturalism that was unlike any of his peers. Naturally, it was unlike anybody else because it sprang from his soul. Gary Busey had such a deeply felt way of saying lines, you couldn't believe anyone wrote his dialogue. It just always sounded like it sprang fully formed out of him. The only other actor of his era that shared that same combination of naturalism and dynamic intensity was Robert Blake. What most actors pass off as naturalism is just ah shucks mumbling. It reminds me what Thurman once said about actors improvising. What most actors call improvising is just stammering and swearing, but another word for improvising is writing, and that's not what you pay actors to do. Busey's unaffected line readings were documentary real, but backed by a dramatic storytelling drive that most naturalistic actors don't possess. Toby Hooper's The Funhouse, like Brian De Palma's Blowout, of the same year, starts with a parody of both the then popular slasher film genre and the shower scene from Psycho. The film's opening shot, like Blowout, the POV of a killer with a knife, looks around the bedroom of a young boy obsessed with monster movies. Posters of Karloff, Frankenstein, and Lugosi's Dracula line his walls, one of the benefits of the film being produced by Universal. as well as a wall collage of Halloween masks, which the unseen POV perspective character slips on his face, like in the opening of Halloween. As well, a section of the bedroom wall is covered in a collection of medieval weapons. You can imagine a mother letting her son pin up a Frankenstein movie poster, but a collection of weapons? Meanwhile, the movie cross cut with the 16 or 17-year-old Amy, Elizabeth Berridge, who would later play Mozart's wife in Amadeus, who will end up being the film's requisite final girl as she enters her bathroom and strips off her clothes to take a shower. The Code Frenzy fake out opening of Blowout fooled a lot of viewers, not me. But the fake out opening of the Funhouse, while fun, doesn't fool anybody, even though the only character we've physically seen is Amy. We know from the style of the little boy's bedroom, this is her horror freak little brother trying to scare the shit out of her. Then, years before Gus Van Sant, Hooper repeats a series of shots from Hitchcock's classic shower set piece as a knife wielding intruder enters the bathroom, rips open the shower curtain, and stabs at the screaming young girl. Then Hooper reveals the knife is bendable plastic. Amy rips off the attacker's mask, and we see it's her laughing 10-year-old asshole little brother, Joey, Sean Carson. We're not supposed to take any of this seriously, it would appear, but the sequence does illustrate a repellent quality that almost all of the film's characters demonstrate, as well as a cynical and disturbing undertone that pulsates throughout the picture. Joey's vicious attack isn't that of a mischievous little scamp. He's a bona fide little creep with an obvious tendency towards sexual violence. For a younger brother to walk into an older sister's room and catch her stark naked is enough to make any teenage girl hit the roof. But to rip open the shower curtain and attack her naked body with a phony butcher knife? That sounds like we need to have a discussion about Joey. Yet, Amy's reaction seems similarly disturbed. She throws on a bathrobe, chases him down the hall, grabs him by the front of his shirt, throwing the boy around, screaming at him in a violent rage. I'm going to make you pay for this, Joey. I'm going to make you Joey if it's the last thing I ever do. And when she says it, it doesn't sound like a cliche or she's just saying an overused expression. It sounds like she's going to fuck him up. She'd like to fuck him up now, but she's got a date coming over and she has to finish getting ready. Really? Why not just tell your mother what this little asshole did? Telling mom and dad should suggest a harsher recompense. Instead, the scene suggests that Amy and Joey are perpetrating a violent and sadistic private war against each other, a war they keep secret from their parents. Throughout the film, it's demonstrated that Amy and Joey never tell their parents anything. Now, you can take the scene at face value and come to the conclusion we're not meant to invest in the realistic implications of this opening. It's just a Hitchcock homage put in the start to this horror film off with a bang. It's a goof, it's a joke, nothing more. But the scene does affect the viewer. Nor does screenwriter Block present this opening as just a phony scare scene that we're supposed to forget, then move on to the real movie. Amy's words, I'm going to make you pay for this, Joey, I'm going to make you if it's the last thing I ever do, play back much later in the film and affect the entire outcome of the storyline. And when it doubles back into the story again, it suggests that the antagonism between Joey and Amy isn't mere sibling rivalry, but a true callous animosity that exists between the youngsters. As opposed to the screenplay's other mostly stock characters, Joey is an interesting deviation from type. In the early 80s, the monster movie aficionado little boy whose room is covered in horror film posters and Frankenstein busts was a new age horror trope. They were usually meant to be a stand in for a young version of either the screenwriter or the director or the grown horror fans in the audience. They always seem to be a 10-year-old Joe Dante. And normally, they're the most lovable character in the whole fucking movie, i.e., Corey Feldman in Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. And in this group of children, Joey stands alone. Block gives the boy an entire B storyline that sets up how Joey is going to save the day and rescue his sister, only to deliciously flip the script and have the malevolent little boy consciously doom his sibling to her ultimate fate. Larry Block's deceptively thin screenplay tells the tale of four teenagers on a double date who visit a seedy traveling carnival passing through town. We've already learned from Amy's father that two girls in a nearby municipality were found dead after visiting the same carnival last year. Each of the four teens is a remarkably unappealing representation of the stock teenage characters in the slasher film. Cooper Huckabee is Buzz, the insensitive, muscle headed, muscle car driving, hunky jerk jock who's Amy's date. Miles Chapin, an actor I've always been allergic to, is an annoying as usual as Richie, the wimpy, creepy, bespectac- what bespectacled best friend of Buzz. Chapin goes through the whole film with a sweater tied around his neck, which in those days was egregious enough for me to hate him on sight. Richie's date is the blonde-haired, slightly slutty Liz, played by the bizarrely named Largo Woodruff, waltzed who waltzed through the entire picture in tight tomato red pants. Nice touch. From the moment Barrage's Amy climbs into Buzz's muscle car, she starts transforming into the uptight final girl archetype. Yet after that weird opening scene, we never really like her. She's not as unlikable as the repellent group of fuckface she attends the carnival with, but for the slasher film Final Girl, she's singularly unsympathetic, and our feelings about her don't change. We never like her, we just dislike her less than Buzz, Richie, and Liz. While the Carney lingo and description of the crooked games on the Midway and Robert Kaler's Carney strike the viewer as authentic, the seedy, shitty carnival of Hooper's The Funhouse is both more compelling and entertaining. Carney focuses more on the shady Midway games and how their crooked operators manipulate both the games and the marks. But for the most part, it ignores the sordid attractions and performers. The exception is one of the film's best moments when the carnival fat man sings a blues version of Fats Domino's The Fat Man. This is not a mistake Hooper makes. The kids take in the freak show, and we and the audience get a gander at some real animal oddities: a two headed cow and a bovine with a cleft palate. The freak show Barker's spiel, alive, 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 these are all creatures of God, ladies and gentlemen, not man, stays in your head and haunts the rest of the film like a subtextual narrator. The three dancers in the hoochie coochie tent seem as real as a gas station toilet, and the film's three older actors, Kevin Conway, William Finley, and Sylvia Miles, all gave entertaining guest star turns as the carnival's featured performers. De Palma regular William Finley, who was also in Hooper's Eaten Alive as a derelict, flask sipping magician, Marco the Magnificent, performs an especially inspired bit. In Chapin's sneaky, troublemaking Richie, who gets the bright idea that it would be a gas for the four of them to spend the night in the funhouse. Naturally, the other three idiots go along with the stupid plan. But before the quarrelsome quartet sneak into the funhouse, setting the film's rigid slasher structure in motion, Hooper takes the viewer on a vivid tour of the sordid pleasures found in this bottom feeding rung of entertainment, made all the more vivid by cinematographer Andrew Laszlo's nighttime photography and the flashing and blinking colored lights of the trashy Enterprise. And as the director guides our perspective, we start noticing little things. The three featured barkers for the Freak Show, the Hoochie Coochie Tent, and the Funhouse are all played by the same actor, Broadway's Kevin Conway. And little by little, due to his slightly haunted demeanor, we start noticing the stumbling worker of the funhouse ride, with the oversized Frankenstein mask he wears over his head. And since it's a universal picture, Hooper can use the classic Jack Pierce flat-headed Frankenstein's monster design and the historic Karloff monster design, but to such a tardy use, has an iconic power like Mickey Mouse redrawn as a rat. We also take notice that while our four leads are off putting, this figure in the Frankenstein mask is immediately sympathetic. The character never loses our sympathy, but once he removes the mask and we see the deformed, cleft headed face underneath, He's never as poignant as he was, mostly because the creature design by Rick Baker, the best special effects makeup artist in the business, is surprisingly bad. Ironically, it's the character's supposedly real face that looks like the monster mask. Also, behind the mask is a San Francisco mime named Wayne Doba, who really effective before his Rick Baker freak face is revealed, who's really effective. Once he loses the Frankenstein mask, out goes Doba's previously finely crafted performance, and he spends the rest of the movie jumping around and screaming. Plus, the slender and small Doba, who looks about the size of Joel Grey, nowhere near fits the description of the character in the script, where he's supposed to be powerfully built and 8 feet tall. Yet, in the ass backward way, it's one of the reasons we never lose our sympathy for this character. Now, while I enjoyed the movie in 1981, one of the big reasons I wasn't more impressed after my first viewing was its similarity to another slasher film that came out that same year. Former gay porn director Tom DeSimone's Linda Blair led effort, Hell Night. Even though the story and setup of both films were practically identical in terms of script, dialogue, performances, and characters, Hell Night was far superior to The Funhouse. The one error that Hooper's films has it over the Linda Blair picture is in production designer Morton Robinowitz's impressively eerie funhouse set Hell Night is set in an abandoned mansion. Assisted by Jose Duarte's art direction and Tom Cole's set decoration, Rabinowitz's creepy set manages to balance the difficult combination of being the showcase funhouse set that a movie titled The Funhouse requires, yet is still believable as part of the low-rent truck and van carnival. The ghoulish faces and the rickety movements of the authentic paint-chipped, herky-jerky animatronic funhouse dolls are the film's real stars. That's why Hooper features them during the opening credits. We remember them from the opening and look forward to spotting them later. Another reason, back in 81, I didn't like the film more was how little I gave a fuck about the lead kids. That doesn't mean the leads are bad actors. Berridge could be better, and Largo Woodruff is no Suki Goodwin, but while I never liked Miles Chapin, you can't deny he is perfectly cast as Shitheel Richie. And Cooper Huckabee, like John Travolta's Billy Nolan and Carrie, has a bit of a scumbag pizzazz. In her review of Carrie, Pauline Kael said Travolta's Billy Nolan could be Warren Beatty's low-life younger brother. Huckabee could be Harrison Ford's. Except for the poor guy in the Frankenstein mask, nobody in the movie is sympathetic. But now I see that as part of the film's subtextual strategy. Doba's character is listed in the credits as the monster, which, considering he's clearly presented as a man with a horrible birth defect, is remarkably insensitive. These are creatures of God, ladies and gentlemen, not man. Even Rick Baker, in his Fangoria interview, mentioned this aspect of the character gave him trepidation. Baker said, "It's a birth defect type monster. After I started thinking about it for a while, I felt really guilty about making that deformity a monster. It's so easy to take horror straight from nature because there are some pretty horrifying real things. I just didn't feel right about making it a straight freak, so I added a little more to it. I hope it comes across that way because it still has a lot of the birth defect aspect to it." Easily, the film's best scene is when the pitiful, naive, and confused young man hiding inside his Frankenstein mask tries to buy sex from the carnival's phony gypsy fortune teller, Sylvia Miles. The teens hiding in the funhouse peep and giggle at the poor, pathetic wretch as he gets a hand job from the mean and far more monstrous than he is, Sylvia Miles. The monster's inability to control himself leads to him having an episode. Remember those two dead girls from the nearby town that the snickering jerks witness? Soon, it's revealed that Kevin Conway, the scary funhouse barker, is the boy's father, and it's he who insists the boy kill the teenagers. Ain't as if I'm asking you to do something you ain't done before. Them two little half-pint girl scouts in Memphis. Significantly, Kevin Conway originated the role of the freak show barker in the original production of the theatrical version of The Elephant Man, and for a while, the Funhouse resembles slasher film version of that story, except compared to this poor thing, John Merrick had it good. He gets Anne Bancroft reading Juliet to his Romeo. The best this poor bastard can do is a hateful hand job from Sylvia Miles. Well, interesting. Interesting there. So, I don't know why. It was kind of a tough read. But yeah, so tomorrow, so you mentioned Floyd was a guy renting a room in Tarantino's mom's house. And I guess Floyd took Tarantino to the movies. So the last chapter of the book, the section is, I suppose, about Floyd. What's up, Frencho? You made it to the last part. I just finished reading the section for the night. Tomorrow is the last one. It's called Floyd Footnote. Tomorrow is the very, 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 very last chapter, last section of the book, section 18. So what page is that? Page 351. 351. I'm going to bookmark it. I'm not sure. I don't remember what you suggested. This is I'm not sure where I got the idea. Oh, I went to Barnes and Noble and I saw this book there. Super expensive. I went to Amazon, bought it there for cheap, and I wanted to read it. I thought it'd be really cool to dive into Quentin Tarantino's mind. Which book was it that you recommended, by the way? I have a hard time recalling. I'm pretty sure I wrote it down. It's in my trailer. I'm starting to remember, kind of, the book you recommended, but I'm having a hard time. Anyways, yep. One last little chapter to go, and we'll be done with this book. Look at this book. Look how freaking big this thing is. Massive. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. I mean, I did enjoy it. There's one more chapter tomorrow, but I did enjoy it very much. It was pretty interesting. So, okay. Well, that's that. Tomorrow, I'm going to go live at 9 p.m. Central again, read the last chapter, and everyone's welcome to join me. So, Rodolfo, man, you've been there after almost I think every chapter. You've pretty much read the book with me. So, you can legitimately say that you read this book, which is pretty cool. All right, buddy. I'm not going to stay any longer. I'm pretty tired. It's exhausting. It's exhausting reading. It can be. It's a little bit exhausting, yeah. Especially when it's this long. But it is interesting. I'll give it that. It's been pretty interesting. There's some people I don't know. He names a few actors I've never heard of, so I kind of lose a little bit of what he's talking about. But and I haven't seen the movie, but I'm definitely gonna make an attempt this year to watch all the movies he's mentioned, for sure. Yeah, doesn't it? Doesn't it? It's almost like information overload, you know. But all right, buddy. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for stopping in. Frencher, thanks for stopping in. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, I hope to see everybody tomorrow for the last chapter. We'll finish it off. All right. With that said, good night, everybody. See you next time.